I want to be one of those people who can ride 100 miles on a bicycle or pull off some similar feat and feel absolutely no desire to tell a soul about it. But I am not that person. And honestly, I don't know of many people who could stay quiet after riding 100 miles on a bicycle.
Well, we had ourselves a frost last night for sure. It says 40 degrees out, but I think that's lying to me.
A century ride is a rite of passage, and a rite of passage only becomes a rite when someone else acknowledges it. Otherwise, how would anyone know you crossed that threshold? Welcome to the Gravel Grinding Boys. This is how I build the engine for a century ride. Both the physical stamina and the mental resilience it takes to go the distance. For this episode, I'm setting things up for a century-plus ride on the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes in North Idaho. It's one of the best resources I have for long-distance training. Pavement, somewhat steady grades, and enough miles to let you settle in and really test yourself.
No, you won't be able to see much, so I'll see at your first light. I gotta keep my eye out for moose. To stay warm.
For these long rides and with few hours of daylight in early February, I have decided to spend the night before at the Stardust Motel in Wallace, Idaho. It's a wonderful mid to late 1900s motel, built when Wallace was still a bustling Silver Valley mining hub, and U.S. Highway 10 carried a steady stream of travelers through town. After a day's work and a 2-hour car ride to get here, it's getting late, and I don't want to miss out on a visit to Wallace Brewing Company for a quick pour, and then over to City Limits Pub and Grill for a salad and maybe a second pour. This isn't a video about the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes. The trail is simply the setting, the backdrop for how I plan, prepare, and ride my century rides. Think of it as the stage where the work happens. The Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes is a 73-mile paved, non-motorized rail trail stretching across the Idaho Panhandle from Mullen in the east to Plummer in the west. It's considered one of the most scenic long-distance trails in the western United States, winding through the historic Silver Valley, following the Coeur d'Alene River, skirting the shoreline of Lake Coeur d'Alene, and rolling through farmland, marshland, and forest. It's open year-round, well, at least when it isn't buried in snow, and it's known for its wildlife, mountain views, and the iconic Chocolate Bridge crossing the lake. This is February. The weather is doing something very unusual for North Idaho. It's the first week of February, and the forecast is calling for lows in the upper 30s, highs in the low 50s, and partly sunny skies. And as luck would have it, today is also a day off from work for me. The trail itself was built on a former Union Pacific rail line. It's part of a major environmental remediation project. The asphalt acts as a protective cap over historic mining waste. So it's not just a recreational corridor, it's an environmental solution with a bike path on top. As for grade, it's pretty simple. My starting points are usually Plummer or Wallace. I've always thought of Plummer as being the main trailhead. From there, you get a glorious 7-mile, 3% downhill run all the way to Chocolate Bridge in Lake Coeur d'Alene. After that, the trail settles into a nearly flat stretch for about 44 miles to Smelterville. From Smelterville to Wallace, the grades rise gently for another 15 miles. From Wallace to Mullen is another 7 miles. and while the grade does increase, it's still a very manageable 2 to 3%. The only catch is that last stretch comes after you've been in the saddle for 66 miles. The Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes isn't just an easy, long, paved trail. There are obstacles, and plenty of them. Yes, it's smooth in most areas. Yes, the grades are gentle, and because of that, once the warmer months hit, the trail fills up with people. On paper, the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes looks like a perfect setting for a century ride. Long, paved, non-motorized, and beautiful. And rightfully so, you'd come to this conclusion. But really, it's only almost perfect. And you're not the only one who realizes this, which means there will be people, and lots of them. With so many trailheads accessible by car, and with scenery that sells itself, the middle sections, where the grade is almost non-existent, attracts riders of every ability level. I was over 50 years old when my son was 13 and when we rode our first 100 miles together.
All right, we're off. Whew. And it is windy. Oh my gosh. Everything's all right. All right, I think we're about to hit some hills here. Whew. Oh, we're cruising now, yeah. Yeah, I don't know where he is. He took off. He's breaking our speed limit that we set. So I gotta catch up now. Look at him all the way down there. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I see the end. All right, 99 miles. Oh, we're so close. Oh my gosh. Never want to do that again.
And I gotta tell you all, I was pretty proud of him. And truth be known, I stood a little taller myself. After getting back home and letting a couple of days pass, I headed over to the pub for a quick celebratory pour. My bearded barkeep stood behind the bar, dish rag over his shoulder, holding glasses up to the window light and checking for any lipstick that survived the under-the-counter washing machine. I settled into my bar stool and he set my pint down on a coaster. His pours were usually dominated by head. It always looked like a cloud had settled inside my glass, a frothy spectacle billowing up and spilling over the rim, leaving barely a sip of liquid underneath. He wasn't a man of conversation, and not much impressed him. You could share something with him that would spark a whole discussion with most people, but he just smiled politely and asked,
"Just this one? Or should I just start you a tab?"
So I shared the story of my first century ride with my son Travis. I expected at least a raised eyebrow, maybe a slow clap. I knew a free beer was a long shot, but hope never killed anyone. Instead, I got a glass of foam and a dismissive one-upper.
"Huh? Yeah, I did 140 once,"
he said like he was mentioning he'd mowed the lawn. Then he just held up another glass and wiped the rim with the dish towel. My chest puffed up the way it does when you're trying to be a hero in a small town. At first, I got my feelings hurt. Lip got all pushed out. I took a sip of foam and thought, oh yeah, watch this. I pulled out my phone, tapped my cycling app, and started planning a personal vendetta ride against his number. A few weeks later, I was back on the trail starting in Wallace. Up to Mullen, then all the way back to Plummer, and then back to Wallace. I figured a there and back would put me right at 146 miles, outdoing him by 6. I was up well before daylight and rode those 146 miles, but somewhere around 130 miles, exhaustion and overthinking teamed up on me. I kept replaying how he casually mentioned his 140 miles. It was such a clean, rounded number. And he wasn't the kind of guy that rounded up for glory. He really never bragged about anything. Great, I thought. I'm going to walk back in there with my 146 miles, and he's going to tell me his 140 was really 149. But he rounded down just to spare my feelings. So I decided to push it another 14 miles, 7 up from Wallace to Mullen, and then 7 back for a rewarding downhill back to Wallace. And I pulled off an even 160-mile day, because nothing says respect me like adding 20 miles to a stranger's brag. I came back expecting applause. I got 160 miles in on Friday, I told him. My bearded barkeep set my glass of foam on a coaster, and we watched the heads settle in silence. And then he said,
Huh, good for you. Opening up a tab or just this one?
He was sincere, he was, just not in the way I rehearsed it in my head. The applause I wanted was a different kind of currency.
I think I need to take a break. Tell you what, stop over here and have me a snack. That's what I'm going to do. I don't know what happened to our sun. It's supposed to be sunny and 50 today, and the water in my line is all frozen. So that means it's below freezing. I mean, I got to take the wind chill into effect, I guess. So let's see where we're at. It's about 8 o'clock in the morning. So we're right at 39.3 miles, averaging about 15 miles per hour. And we're 2 hours and 36 minutes in the saddle. Look at us. All right, we're about 26 miles from Plummer, and then we'll turn around. I usually stop off more often than every 20 miles. I shouldn't, but I do. It helps. It's cold this morning. It's weird because even though I've got these glasses, the cold really makes your eyes stiff, being able to blink. Isn't that weird? I don't know. That's weird. No, it's not. It is what it is. I'm going to eat this here banana. I know one thing's for sure. You ain't going to want to sit there and watch me. Really foggy this morning. Very foggy. And the fog is thick. Builds up on the glasses. But, huh. Yeah, I got cold.
Now, someone out there is going to say, I don't ride to beat others. I ride to be better than I was yesterday, or something along those lines. And there's no issue there, friend. None at all. But then again, by what standard do you measure yourself? If comparing against your past rides works for you, then bravo, truly. But I'd like to present Exhibit A. world and Olympic records. What drives a human being to take on a physical challenge that pushes the body to its extreme limits? And how do we even know what our bodies are capable of? As a cyclist, I don't necessarily want to beat other riders or compete with their times and distances. Well, yeah, there's a little bit of that, sure. Who didn't want to be the fastest, toughest, and smartest kid at school? But competing against others really isn't my motivation, truly. I want to be inspired by others. I want to see and hear how they've accomplished something so I can overcome my biggest obstacle, my doubt. After all, how did I know I could ride 100 miles on a bicycle? Well, that's because of all the hype around cyclists and the golden standard of the century ride. That's how. Other people had done it, and after that first barkeep conversation about my 100-mile ride, how did I know I could ride more than 140 miles? Because my bearded barkeep had done it. That's how. Have you ever heard of the Roger Bannister effect? For many years, people believed the human body simply couldn't run a mile in under 4 minutes. Then in 1954, a British runner named Roger Bannister ran it in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds. Within weeks, an Australian runner named John Landy ran it even faster, 3 minutes and 58 seconds. Before my encounter with my bearded barkeep, I was bragging about a 100-mile ride as if I'd reached my limit. His 140-mile brag motivated me to attempt 146 miles and then push it to 160. Later, when I shared that 160-mile success with someone else, they asked,
"So why didn't you just do another 40 miles? Make it an even 200.
I knew why. I believed my mind and body were done at 160 miles. But the question got my curiosity going. 200 miles? Who could do that? And now that that topic was lodged in my brain, I surprisingly learned that a friend of mine had done a double century once. How did I not know this? Later, after convincing myself to try that double century and actually completing a 203-mile bike ride, I realized something important. Even though my mind and body felt spent at 160 miles on that earlier ride, they still had more to give. And yes, let's be honest, sometimes it is about outdoing someone else. We're competitive creatures, but that competitive is also the essence of discovery. You can do more than you thought you could. The proof is someone else has already done it. Show them first, and then they'll believe it can be done. The U.S. Army strongly emphasizes the principle of leading by example. Leaders, whether they're a senior NCO or officers, are expected to demonstrate the standard skills and behavior they want their soldiers to follow. Soldiers believe what they see, not what they hear. Actions reinforce words. When I was in the Army basic training, the drill sergeant would introduce a PEC, P-E-C, a performance endurance course. He didn't just describe it. He didn't just show it to us. He ran the course first, right in front of us. We saw it, we believed it, and once we believed it, we succeeded. Competing with others is A-okay. Don't tell yourself otherwise. If you only compete with yourself, you're going to eventually fall short. Hey, I'm a nurse and I know things. How does a 55-year-old compete with their 35-year-old self? You can't. But a 55-year-old can look at what another 55-year-old can do and use that as the benchmark. If I only compete against myself, I'll end up losing. Eventually, there's going to come a day when I physically cannot ride 100 miles on a bicycle any longer. Many will disagree, and that's okay. But how do you know you can ride 100 miles on a bicycle if you've never done it before? You do it the same way you did when you were a kid. If Bobby can do it, so can I. And I'm here to tell you, 203 miles when I was 53 years old? Any 53-year-olds out there? Just say it to yourself.
If Sule can do it, so can I.
And now you know it can be done, so go do it. But tell me if you do. That way I can go get a 210-mile day in and one-up ya. Seriously though, it's perfectly fine to compete only with yourself. But consider Olympic records, the Guinness Book of World Records, and every other benchmark we celebrate. These are the reminders of what humans are capable of, even when we didn't believe it at first. I've ridden a dozen or so centuries over the past 5 years, and every single one follows the same pattern. Before the ride, there's anticipation and excitement mixed with nervousness and doubt. I slip into that preparation mindset, and I'm always skeptical of the pre-ride brag. I'm going to ride 100 miles today. No, save those posts for the end. During the ride, I cycle through a trio of emotions, pun absolutely intended. At the start, I'm determined with a bit of apprehension, especially on the there and back route. I'll be 40 miles from a turnaround point thinking, dang, I got 80 more miles just to get back to this spot.
All right, we're off. Whew. And it is windy. Oh my gosh.
In the middle of the ride, fatigue has set in, but I still feel challenged. Everything I've done so far, I've got to do it again, just in the opposite direction.
Yeah, I don't know where he is. He took off. He's breaking our speed limit that we set. I gotta catch up now. Look at him all the way down there. Oh my gosh.
Toward the end of the ride, I'm exhausted and pushed forward by the promise of physical relief and emotional pride once I stop pedaling. I pass familiar markers, like that 40-mile point, reminding me I've already done that 80 miles back to this point. And one thing always holds true. The last 10 or 15 miles are some of the most challenging, whether it's a 100-mile ride or a 160-mile ride. I feel emotionally and physically done. But quitting is not an option. There's no way that's going to happen at this point.
All right, 99 miles. Oh, we're so close. 100.
After the ride comes pure joy and gratitude. I know I've reached the same point on the clock that I would have reached no matter how I'd spent my day. But instead of relaxing and running errands, I'm standing at the end of a 100-mile-plus bicycle ride. And then comes the need for validation and connection. Sharing the story with friends, family, or fellow cyclists brings a sense of belonging. Hey, I'm just keeping it real. Since that first 100-mile ride with Travis, he and I have done a couple more centuries together. He's more of a ride to somewhere kind of cyclist, motivated by the journey to the next town or campsite. And honestly, so am I. I love that feeling of arriving somewhere under my own power. He's not opposed to a 100-mile ride, but long rides that start and end at the same place just for the sake of stacking miles, that doesn't motivate him. And that's okay. He puts in his miles, don't you worry none. During a solo ride on one of the roughest rail trails in America, the Palouse to Cascade State Park Trail, I pushed that last day to finish at 109 miles. And this is for my own validation as someone riding the mostly flat, paved Trail to Coeur d'Alene's on today's Century Plus ride. That 109-mile day was done on a loaded fat bike in deep and rough gravel and mostly uphill. But how would I have known I could make it 100-plus miles on that trail, a trail that goes somewhere, if I hadn't already proven it to myself on so many there and back century rides? The reason I bring this seemingly boastful information to the story is this. Every ride follows the same predictable pattern. Before the ride, the start, the middle, the end, and the after-ride emotions and relief. It doesn't matter if it's 100 miles, 130 miles, 160 miles, or even a 200-mile ride, or under what conditions. The pattern has always been the same. Here's the strange part. On a planned 100-mile ride, I'm emotionally and physically done somewhere between miles 85 and 100. On a planned 160-mile ride, that same I'm done feeling doesn't hit until around mile 140. Isn't that something? Think about it for a bit. At 100 miles of a 160-mile ride, I'm just coming out of the middle of the ride phase. Fatigued, sure, but still challenged. Still believing I can make it happen. But if I have to pedal past 100 miles on a planned century ride, miles 101, 102, 103, and so on are miserable. I feel completely spent. That observation tells me something very important. The physical aspect of a century ride is driven not only by preparation, but by mental expectation. Why are miles 101, 102, and 103 miserable on a 100-mile bike ride that just hasn't ended yet, but but those same miles are practically invisible on a 160-mile ride. Now, I'm not suggesting you try to trick yourself into believing you're going to ride 160 miles when you know good and well you're going to quit at 100. No, that would be silly. But what I am saying is that your brain is basically a lazy toddler negotiating bedtime. On a century plan, nope, lights out at 99 miles, I'm spent. On a 160-mile plan, oh, we're going longer? Fine, I'll complain later. Meanwhile, I'm the sucker paying the full price for the same misery, just stretched out. This is genius-level self-sabotage right here. Up to now, I've given you some of my observations and experiences with century rides. But feelings don't pedal bicycles. Your body does. If you're struggling to ride 5 miles without stopping on a 20-mile ride, a century might still be in you, but you're going to have to cross some physical and emotional milestones first to find it. So let's get into how I prepare and ride a century, not just to endure it, but to also enjoy it. Let's get into preparing and training, building the engine. Cyclists can control how much they train beforehand, building both the physical stamina and the mental resilience. You don't need to be fast, you need to be durable. Let me repeat that. You do not need to be fast, but you do need to be durable, both mentally and physically. Aim for 60 to 70% of your planned distance as your longest ride, about 60 to 70 miles if you're doing a century, and do this 2 to 3 weeks before the big day. If you can ride 70 miles in a day, you can ride 100 miles in a day. Yeah, I said it. But if your longest ride so far is 20 to 25 miles, you're still building the engine. Keep going. Try back-to-back hero rides. Maybe 40 to 50 miles on a Saturday and then back it up with 30 to 40 miles on a Sunday. This builds fatigue resistance, one of the most important ingredients in long-distance cycling. A lot of this is giving your mind the proof that it can be done. Remember, you must first believe it if you want to achieve it. Don't try 100 miles on a bike you haven't become intimate with. And please, for all that is holy and good, don't do it on a new saddle. Let your butt and that saddle get to know each other first. Make sure your tires are in great shape, your brakes aren't worn, and your bike is tuned and ready for the day. A clicking or grinding sound is tolerable for 10 miles, but not for 100. Remember, you're going to spend 7 to 10 hours on this bicycle. When you're done, you're probably going to spend $50 to $100 on a celebration meal. Well, with today's restaurant prices anyway. A meal will last 1 to 2 hours tops. A noisy bike lasts 8 to 10 hours. And for $100, you could have gotten that issue fixed. How much food and water do you need? That's where your training rides come in. I carry a 3-liter bladder on my bicycle. In the summer, I may fill that twice on a century ride, sometimes more. One thing I will absolutely suggest, don't try anything new on your century ride. No foods, drinks, gels, or bars. Stick with what your stomach already trusts. Here's the serious part. If you get an upset stomach, you're going to stop eating. Stop bringing in nutrition and you're going to bonk. B-O-N-K. And nothing says bad day on a bike like bonking while your gut is staging a full-scale porta-potty protest. You'll be pedaling past a Forest Service vault toilet, and your brain will whisper, "It's fine. We can stop at the next one," while your intestines are already filling out the paperwork for an emergency evacuation. The goal is not to bonk. Bonking is sudden. It's an overwhelming crash in energy caused by the depletion of glycogen stores. Your legs will feel like wet sandbags. Your brain's going to get foggy. You'll get shaky, irritable, emotional, or weirdly hopeless. And even easy pedaling feels like you're climbing Everest with flat tires. It's not getting tired. It's the endurance sport equivalent of your internal power grid going dark. They say to aim for 60 to 90 grams of carbs per hour. Carbohydrates, you know. Considering net carbs, That's roughly 3 to 4 apples or about 4 slices of bread per hour. That seems like a lot to me. I keep it simple. Fig bars and a bit of easy-to-eat protein, electrolytes, and water. I'll pack a cooked sweet potato and bananas as well. Are they heavy? Well, yeah, they're heavy. But I'm going to find new and interesting places to pack them during the ride, don't you worry none. I try not to overthink it, but I definitely don't underthink it. Use your training rides to dial this in. When you're riding your 60 to 70% distance days and your hero rides, how do you feel while riding? How do you feel afterwards? Building the machine during training isn't just about seeing if you can make the distance. It's about learning how you feel while you make that distance. Getting behind on calories or hydration will ruin the ride, and also the after-ride celebration. And trust me, it's hard to catch back up. Dehydration can happen quickly. Rehydration takes time for your cells to actually absorb the water. So make note. How much do you need to eat to feel good after 40 to 50 miles on a bicycle? And stay ahead of your calories and hydration, especially the hydration. Hydration, definitely. If you're not peeing periodically, you ain't drinking enough. But don't expect your urinary output to match your fluid intake. Under optimal conditions, you may sweat a half to a full liter per hour, and you'll breathe out another tenth or so of a liter through respiratory water loss. You may lose over 4 liters and probably more through sweat and breathing over a 100-mile ride in optimal conditions. Like I said, I'm a nurse and I know things.
Well, we're at the halfway mark. Look at us. It's weird being here at this trailhead. This is in Plummer. I'm looking up at the parking lot. Usually when I pull up to this area, my car's sitting there waiting on me. I've seen one cyclist, just one, probably a fellow a little older than me, and a couple of walkers, but nobody else. You know why I ain't seen nobody else? Because it's cold and it's hard. Once it warms up and gets easy, you'll see everybody out here. So what I'm going to do right now is take myself a little break. I've got 65, 66 miles to go back. I got to do it all over again. I got to go back now. Car's over there. And we ain't got but one. Take this helmet off for a while. Okay, I'll have myself a little jerky, banana, orange juice. I'm just going to chill for a little bit. Gloves are kind of soggy. A little bit worried they're going to make my hands cold going back. When I stop, I tend to get cold hands, cold feet, but it is warming up. Okay, good. Might do some eye drops too. That cold really works my eyes over. Oh, don't that feel good? All right, let's just sit here for a while. What do you think? 65 miles is a good ride all by itself. Here, y'all don't want to watch me eat and drink, do you? I didn't think so.
Here we go.
Now, when you're planning your route, never fall into the trap of thinking 100 miles is 100 miles. Not all century rides are created equal. Surface quality, elevation and terrain, wind direction, rest stop locations, and even scenery all influence the difficulty of a century ride. Distance is one thing, time in the saddle is another. Spend 7 to 10 hours on a bike and I promise you, your body will have opinions by the end. Choosing the route, planning rest stops, and deciding on your start time are all within your control. The trail or road surface will absolutely influence the ride. Let's be honest, I don't know of any 100-mile paved route that's all downhill with a predictable tailwind and no traffic. If this exists, you let me know. I'll bring the picnic basket. On the other hand, Riding uphill for 100 miles in deep gravel and sand is asking for trouble. There's nothing wrong with a challenge, but it's not the place to start your century journey. My philosophy is this: riding the easiest route will be enjoyable, but it'll leave you wondering, was that too easy? Can I really do this? Riding the hardest route will promote fatigue, muscle exhaustion, and tax your mental capacity to endure. A century takes time. If you spend 10 to 14 hours in the saddle on deep gravel with constant climbing that will force you to make more rest stops, you may not have enough daylight to finish. If the trail is too hard and kicks you off your bike, it'll only validate your mind's doubt that you can't do this. Stack too much against yourself and you may fail. Here's my suggestion. Accept the fact there is no such thing as a 100-mile all-downhill fairy tale ride, but also avoid the routes from hell. Remember, this is 100 miles on a bicycle. Even if you were at home on a trainer with no wind and no grade, pedaling the equivalent of 100 miles would still be hard. The distance is challenging in and of itself, so pick a very doable route with minimal grade changes. When choosing between paved roads, gravel, or mixed surfaces, go with what you're used to and what you enjoy. Pavement is not always the best choice. While smoother surfaces are generally easier and faster, some paved trails have jarring root heaves and cracks that are rougher than gravel. Parts of the Trail of the Coeur d'Alenes has some pretty sharp bumps and dips. Most folks will be impressed that you rode 100 miles, not the details of your route. Prove it to yourself that you can ride a century, and then up your game next time. Paved cycling trails also attract people. Trust me, 100 miles of on your left can be an exercise in interpersonal patience. By mile 90, your tolerance is going to be thin. You'll be adding a few expletives to encourage joyriding Bubba with his noise-canceling headphones, weaving all over the trail on his wide-tired cruiser to get the out of the way. So yes, smoother surfaces are generally easier and faster, but they're not always the best choice. And if someone asks,
"Isn't that pavement the whole way?"
then just smile and say, well, yeah, it is. And it sounds like you've got some important tips for improving my century rides. Are you free this Saturday for a century? I'd love to learn from the master. Trust me, you'll never hear that question again. There's nothing wrong with pavement the whole way. Even a 25-mile paved rail trail ridden out and back twice is perfect. Speaking of loops and out and backs, there's something to consider. Whatever was easy getting to the turnaround point will now be your hard on the way back, and whatever was hard will now be your easy. That hill you climbed with a headwind to reach the turnaround becomes a downhill with a tailwind on the return. Beautiful. Well, in theory, but that's how I plan these things. If anyone says,
"Isn't that the downhill route?"
remind them, there is no downhill route on a there and back. On a there and back, plan the most difficult direction for the first half. Get the hards out of the way early. That leaves more easies for the return when you're more fatigued. Point-to-point routes start in one place and end somewhere completely different. Rarely are they all downhill. Sure, I love a century ride to be mostly downhill with a tailwind. Who doesn't? But it's never that easy, is it? Once you've ridden your first 100 miles, then get creative. Try that all uphill route, an all gravel route, or whatever personal challenge calls you. Keep in mind, rough or loose surfaces, like deep gravel or sand, increases fatigue and the risk of mechanical issues. Plan accordingly. Break down in the middle of nowhere 50 miles from the car. That may have taken you 3 to 5 hours to reach on a bicycle, but it could take 15 to 25 hours to walk back while pushing that bicycle. Even if the last house was 10 to 15 miles back, getting there while pushing your bicycle can take 4 to 8 hours. Plan for locations where you can rest, refuel, and access water or food. Well-placed stops help manage fatigue and hydration. Where will you find water? Aside from calories, water is the most important thing here. Keep your watering holes in mind. It's not uncommon for me to drain the last drops from my 3-liter bladder and roll my bike into a grocery store or convenience store to grab water from the cooler or the end cap. You could just bring that lock and leave the bicycle outside, but I'm not packing that albatross with me on a century, no sir, no ma'am. I'm not planning on being more than 2 inches away from my bike anyway. Know that you'll become fatigued during the last 25 to 30 miles. And during those miles, avoid those roads with heavier traffic when your attentiveness may be fading during these last miles. Choose the safer route that has less traffic and more space for cyclists. But safer routes also tend to have more cyclists and pedestrians. And as you know, your alertness fades as your fatigue builds. I believe that 90% of not getting run over by a car is the cyclist's responsibility. Many will not agree with me on this one, and then that's fine. But fatigue will distract you from safety. Don't ride a highway with no shoulder for the last 25 miles. That's a good way to make a mistake and get run over.
He didn't want to wait 2 seconds, did he?
Weather is another major factor in route planning. First of all, a snow-covered trail on a freezing day is a no-go for me. On this ride, I anticipated sun in mid-50s, an anomaly for early February in North Idaho. So I figured, why not start my spring riding season now? My tires on the trail experience gave me something different: frost, fog, and cold. The ride started in the 20s or low 30s, and may have reached 40s for the day's high. Somewhere along the way, I developed what's called cold-induced corneal haze, or cold-induced corneal edema. In cold and windy conditions, the cornea, the clear front surface of the eye, can temporarily swell or develop a thin film of moisture. The result is blurry or cloudy vision and halos around light sources. This isn't just teary, it's more like your eyes are fogging over, like looking through a cataract. I had no idea this was a thing. Even as a nurse, I always carry eye drops assuming sweat or gunk caused the blurriness, but this was different, and truth be told, I didn't know if it was going to clear. The text on my phone looked like Arabic script, even with my readers. We only have the one car, and I used it to get to Wallace the night before. And if I had been closer to home, with my wife having the car, I may would have called her and quit because of this thing with my eyes. Yeah, it was that concerning. Fortunately, the condition cleared, and I'm happy to say my eyes work like the vintage pieces they are. I think it was a mix of the cold, the wind I created from my movement, and the thick fog that day. And yeah, I have goggles for cold rides, but with lows predicted in the 30s and highs in the 50s with sunshine, yeah, you'd have left them at home too. Seriously though, weather is absolutely a consideration when planning a century route. And if the forecast shifts, you can still attempt the ride, just make sure you have a bailout point and support. Don't get 50 miles from the car in a hailstorm. You get it. Now the plus side of weather. I don't like wind beating me in my face, period. When I rode the Palouse to Cascade State Park Trail in Washington, I rode it west to east. The wind around the Columbia River is murder, and it usually blows west to east. Will I ever ride in the opposite direction? Maybe. Will a 30-mile-an-hour headwind make for a great day on the trail? Well, you answer that. Cycling in weather is like telling a funny story about something that happened to you. The listener may not get it, and eventually you'll have to say, oh, you had to be there to understand. So don't try to be tougher than you really are by riding 100 miles in bad weather. If you're doing a loop or an out and back, plan your starting point and initial direction based on wind predictions. Give me wind in my face for the first 50 miles, and a tailwind pushing me home for the last 50. Yes, sir, yes, ma'am. That's how to win right there. I do prepare for weather, but my preference for a century ride is not to pack like I'm bike packing. I want to be lean and light. Rain gear is light, sure, but so is an extra inner tube, a few electrolyte tablets, a snack, and so on. It all adds up in weight and bulk. I consider a century ride a mission and a test of will. I don't really consider it to be an adventure. My focus is on the miles, not the moose near the trail side. Plan for the most probable obstacles, including weather, and leave the rest at home. If you do get into trouble, refer back to your route planning. Know your bailout points. What do I wear on a Century ride? Well, first of all, I'm going to say nipple in this section, so get the giggles out of the way. I'm confident you got a pair of those dudes too. And I say that with compassion for those of you who don't. But then again, no nipples, no nipple chafing. If you're preparing for a Century ride, you're probably an experienced rider and have your go-to clothing dialed in. But based on the number of social media posts about nipple chafing, saddle sores, and numb parts, you might appreciate a few tips on how I dress for a Century ride. And honestly, for most of my rides. Nothing says endurance athlete like raw, angry chest buttons, screaming at mile 50. I used to tough it out like an idiot. Now I wear shirts so tight they could double as shapewear. Glamorous? Oh no. Effective? Absolutely. My shirtless Beachbody era is over. Truth be known, it really never existed. These days I dress like a sausage in compression gear trying to keep everything from migrating south mid-ride. I used to be overweight. Yes, I did. And according to my BMI, I still am. Fat? No. Fluffy in some areas? You bet. I'd confess to that. But hey, I love carbs, and I love beer, and I don't enjoy exercising, which is why I cycle. I ride 3,500 to 4,500 miles a year, and not one day of it feels like exercise. Now I'm in my 50s, and if you're in the Nifty 50 Club, you know all about that loose skin, especially if you've lost weight. Sitting on saddles for hours can make the skin bunch and pinch, like an old sock sliding down in your shoe. Annoying at first, painful eventually. As a nurse, I think a lot about skin integrity. Bunched sheets in a hospital bed or bunched clothing in a wheelchair can all cause pressure sores. The same things can happen with bunched clothing or skin folds on a bike saddle. Skin folds, especially in the inner thighs and groin, can be problematic. You might find a comfortable spot on the saddle, but shifting positions can wake up those numb areas. Yep, you found that comfortable spot because your parts were numb and you didn't know any better. You're probably thinking about padded shorts or chamois, maybe even chamois cream. I don't use chamois cream. I don't like it. I own padded shorts but rarely wear them. My solution is compression shorts or spandex sport shorts. One size smaller, not painfully tight, just snug enough to keep everything in place, whether it's loose skin or sensitive areas. Women have their own issues too, and as a nurse, I understand that female anatomy. Unfortunately, more than most men would like to know. Unfortunately, men won't get that, but you ladies will, and for that, I am sorry. I tried to get the girl nurse to do that thing for you I had to, but she told me no. Compression shorts are smooth and reduce friction from that side-to-side motion. Mine are not padded. In winter, my lower body layering starts with those spandex shorts, then a mid-weight base layer from REI, followed by Rock Bros cycling pants. If there's going to be weather, I add a Patagonia Dirt Roamer storm pant. In summer, I skip the mid-weight layer, and that's my lower body formula right there. Like I said, I usually don't bring my chamois, but I'll use them when needed for pressure relief. Bicycle saddles are designed for efficiency, not comfort. There's a reason bar stools aren't shaped like bicycle saddles. It's not the saddle sore that gets me on long rides. It's the overall pressure of something half the size of my butt pressing into my plumbing. And yeah, I got plumbing too. For the upper body, nipple chafing is common. Friction from clothing, especially during long rides, can cause irritation. And when those dudes get irritated at mile 50 of 100, get ready for some pain. Sweat and loose shirts can make it worse, even in the winter. And most are going to understand why winter weather can turn those Captain Crunch berries into bacon bits. That headlight on your bike isn't the only headlight that's turned on during the winter. Sensitive skin and anatomy play a role. Men can have sensitive skin too. My solution to avoid the pink polka dots is a tight-fitting, non-abrasive compression shirt. I got mine from Amazon. It claims to be breathable and quick-drying, but honestly, it holds moisture. What works is the smooth, non-abrasive fabric that stays put and prevents irritation. I buy them a size too small. In the winter, I start with this compression shirt. Then I add a mid-weight base layer from REI, followed by a thin, quick-dry shirt, and then a thermal cycling jersey. If there's going to be weather, I add a Patagonia Dirt Roamer Storm jacket, and in the warmer months, I skip the midweight layer in the jersey. On Century rides, I bring an extra compression shirt to change into if I get too sweaty. And that's it. No overthinking, no expensive bibs or high-end cycling shorts, just simple gear that works for me. And yeah, I did splurge on the Patagonia Dirt Roamer jacket and pants. But I waited for a backcountry sale, and then I bundled it with other gear I needed. A win-win. Plus, my last Patagonia shell I bought was in 1998 at the REI in Anchorage, Alaska, and I still use it today. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be using it on this ride. Here's the thing about a Century. It's not just the distance. It's the time in the saddle, the slow negotiation between your wheel and your backside. You can control a lot. The route, the saddle fit, the training, and even the weather to some degree. But you cannot control the fact that you're the one turning those pedals 25 to 35,000 times to reach that 100 miles. People outside the cycling circle will try to simplify it.
You're thin because you ride. 100 miles is no issue for you. You ride all the time.
Great. Well, I'm not thin. And even if I were, it doesn't make the ride any less real. It's like telling someone their marathon was easy just because they trained for it. Training is the hard part. Showing up is the hard part. The ride is the proof. Travis once asked me on the Right-of-Way Trail in southwest Idaho, "Daddy, where is everyone at?" "They're not here," I told him. "Why?" "Because it's hard." On the Hiawatha, he asked me, "Why are all these people here?" "Well, son, they're here because it's easy." People gather where comfort lives and scatter where challenge waits. Most people you ask will never have completed a Century ride. It sits just outside their physical and mental paradigm of what's possible. A Century ride is the kind of thing that raises eyebrows and lowers skepticism. It's a ridiculous flex and a quiet, private victory at the same time. So get your Century ride in. Heck, go for a double Century before it's too late. Enjoy the competition against yourself and against others. But don't let a barkeep shrug haunt you because he one-upped your distance. It's okay to do your own crazy one-up ride. At the same time, don't let a stranger's number become your sole metric for success. It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Posting your success is a way to connect and feel validated. But don't pedal only for the applause. Pedal for the things that actually matter. And what does matter? Hey, friend, that's up to you. That's yours to discover and yours to contemplate for the next 100 miles along the trail. Emotions will run you ragged while you're riding, culminating in the "I'm ready to be done" and "I'm never doing this again."
100. Oh my gosh. Never want to do that again.
But when the miles are behind you, you're going to think differently. I know you will. After finishing that first 100 miles, after coaching my son, then 13 years old, to press on during those last miles, he wiped the sweat from his forehead and grinned and said, "That was hard, Daddy. Let's do it again." In that laugh was everything: pride, exhaustion, and the kind of joy that doesn't fit on a leaderboard. The real one-up wasn't against the barkeep or the odometer. It wasn't even against the part of me that needed validation from strangers. The Century, any Century, is a private conversation between you and the trail, and the best part is who you bring along. So now when I tell the story at the bar, I still mention the miles. I still let the phone settle, but I listen for the laugh that follows, and I know the only head count that matters is the one at my table. So yeah, the barkeep can keep his 140 miles. I'll take my son's grin, a beer that's at least 50% liquid this time, and the quiet knowledge that I'm the same ridiculous guy that once rode 20 extra miles just to feel seen. Turns out the real victory isn't the miles. It's surviving my own dumb ideas with a smile, and maybe a little less foam.
Well, we're about 8 hours into it, 115 miles. Probably got another 15 to go, somewhere in that ballpark. You'll find that when you start one of these long rides, you can stop every 20 miles or so for a rest. At least that's for me. That's the way I do it. But as I pass that 50, 60, 70 mile mark, I'm finding myself about every 10 miles wanting to stop and take a break. Not necessarily to eat something, but to just get off the bicycle. You know what I'm saying? There is something weird about my eye. It looks like I'm looking through a cataract. I'm a nurse and, you know, people describe them, but it's just this eye especially, and it's weird. I don't know if it's because it's wind blown. I didn't expect it to be as cold today as it is. It's just now, sun's coming out, and it's just now looking like I expected it to be all day, but it was quite gloomy. And I mean, I'm not complaining. It's not like I'm gonna call management or anything like that. You know what I'm saying? We're fixing to cross back under I-90. You notice when you've been on the bicycle for a long time, you've been in that same position, and then you get stiff and you have to turn yourself like an old person. I know what most of you young folks are thinking, but no, I'm not old. Old is 15 years from now. Don't you forget it. All right, let's get back on the bicycle. This day ain't gonna end by itself. Well, it will, but that bicycle's not gonna ride itself. Well, at least mine don't. I'm on your left. I'm on your left. I'm on your left. From Wallace to Wallace. No real destination today except for the experience. Yes, yes ma'am. That was a long ride. Get over to that motel where I parked my car and get on that same interstate those folks are driving on, get my butt home, get me a beer. That was a job. Tell you what, that was a job. Glad I did it. Let's do it again. Not today, not today.
And that's it for the gravel grinding boys, preparing and training to build the engine for the century ride. Remember this, you're not defined by your potential, you're defined by your follow-through. Even when your follow-through looks like a middle-aged dude covered up in spandex, chasing the validation from a guy who wipes glasses for a living. The world doesn't reward potential or promises, it rewards action. Someone who does it badly is someone who does it. And someone who could do it great but doesn't do it is just someone who didn't do it. Badly, slowly, imperfectly, just do it. Because the alternative is sitting on the couch wondering, what if? And trust me, that couch has a lot more foam than my beer ever will. A century is proof that you can choose the harder thing and come out on the other side changed, even if only a little. And if you're lucky, you'll share the trail with someone who makes the miles matter. The numbers fade, the bragging rights fade, but the ride, the real ride, it'll stay with you. You're not defined by your potential. You're defined by your follow-through. The world pays out on effort, not promises. The person who shows up, even messy, slow, or imperfect, wins every time over the person that never starts. So build the engine, ride the century. Everything else, it's just foam.